In den Holzbaracken waren dreiteilige Betten. Läuse, Flöhe und Fliegen waren die Folge davon. Die Toten kamen in ein von Brettern aufgebautes Viereck.
Fällt auch ihr Name. Die Zelle von Maria Mandel.
Have you ever stared into the abyss of human cruelty? Maria Mandel, infamously known as the Beast of Auschwitz, personifies this darkness. Born into an ordinary world, she morphed into a figure of extraordinary brutality. This tale unravels her journey from an unremarkable beginning to becoming a key enforcer in one of history's darkest chapters. What twists of fate led her down this heinous path? Early life and path to infamy. Maria Mandel's story begins in Austria, 1912, in an era marked by socio-political turmoil. Born into a middle-class family, her life seemed destined for normalcy, yet the shadows of the upcoming catastrophic events were already looming. The First World War and the subsequent socio-economic instability profoundly impacted the young Maria, as they did many of her generation. In the difficult 1930s, Mandel, like many others, found herself struggling. Jobs were scarce, and desperation was rampant. Her journey to infamy began with a seemingly innocuous decision to seek better opportunities in neighboring Germany. This move, though driven by economic necessity, positioned her in the epicenter of a burgeoning radical ideology, National Socialism. Mandel's interaction with National Socialism was not incidental. Her relatives' connections and her growing sympathy for the ideology opened doors for her. She began her career in the Nazi regime modestly as a warden at the Lichtenberg concentration camp. Lichtenberg, primarily housing political prisoners, was a grim foreshadowing of the horrors that would later engulf Europe. Here, Mandel's descent into brutality began. Initially, her role was limited to overseeing the daily operations of the camp, but as the regime's policies radicalized, so did she. The camp's regime grew harsher, and Mandel's involvement deepened. By the time Ravensbrück, a concentration camp exclusively for women, opened in 1939, Mandel had transformed. No longer just an overseer, she became an active participant in the regime's atrocities. At Ravensbrück, Mandel's cruelty escalated. She didn't just enforce the rules, she relished in the suffering of the prisoners. Standard punishments, already harsh, were turned into sadistic displays under her watch. The regime at Ravensbrück under Mandel was marked by extreme punishments, often for minor infractions. The infamous 25 lashes were often extended to over 75 under her directive, a testament to her growing brutality. What drove Mandel to such extremes? Was it a quest for power, a deep-seated sadism, or a warped belief in the Nazi ideology? Whatever the reasons, her actions caught the attention of her superiors. Her efficiency and ruthlessness earned her a dreaded promotion to Auschwitz, the Nazi regime's most notorious death camp. At Auschwitz, Mandel's role reached its zenith. She was appointed the head supervisor of the female section, a position that gave her unprecedented power over thousands of lives. Under her watch, the camp witnessed some of the most horrific atrocities of the Holocaust. She was instrumental in selecting prisoners for extermination and for the inhuman experiments conducted by Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death. Mandel's story is a stark reminder of the depths of human depravity. Her transformation from an ordinary citizen into a perpetrator of unspeakable crimes raises haunting questions. Was she a product of her time, shaped by the tumultuous events that surrounded her? Or was there an inherent darkness within her that the Nazi regime merely unleashed? Rise to power. The beast takes charge. Maria Mandel's ascent within the Nazi regime was a grim demonstration of how ambition and ideology can intertwine to create a figure of unspeakable cruelty. Her journey from an overseer at Lichtenberg to a commanding presence at Auschwitz encapsulates a disturbing transformation fueled by the escalating radicalization of the Nazi regime. In Lichtenberg, Mandel's initial role was relatively subdued, confined to supervisory duties. However, the seeds of her future brutality were already being sown. The camp, primarily housing political prisoners, was a training ground for her burgeoning cruelty. As the political climate in Germany intensified, so did the treatment of prisoners under the Nazi regime, and Mandel was at the forefront of this shift. Her move to Ravensbrück marked a significant escalation in her career and her involvement in Nazi atrocities. Ravensbrück, unlike Lichtenberg, was a concentration camp specifically designed for women. This shift was significant. It was here that Mandel began to shape her terrifying legacy. The camp, which started as a facility for labor and re-education, soon turned into a site of unimaginable horrors, with Mandel playing a pivotal role. At Ravensbrück, Mandel's authority grew, and with it, her capacity for cruelty. She was known for her strict enforcement of rules and her merciless approach to punishment. Her methods were not just about maintaining order. They were about instilling fear and demonstrating power. The standard punishment of 25 lashes was often tripled under her directive. These punishments were not just physical, they were psychological, designed to break the spirit of the prisoners. Mandel's reputation for brutality quickly grew, not just among the prisoners but also among her peers and superiors. Her methods were efficient, her obedience to the Nazi ideology unwavering. It was this combination of efficiency and ideological purity that caught the attention of the higher echelons of the Nazi hierarchy. Her ability to instill fear and maintain order made her an invaluable asset to the regime. Her next and most infamous assignment was at Auschwitz. Her transfer to Auschwitz coincided with the camp's evolution into a death factory. Here, her role was not just to oversee the camp, but to ensure its smooth operation as a center of mass extermination. Auschwitz was the epicenter of the Holocaust, and Mandel was now one of its key orchestrators. As the head supervisor of the female section at Auschwitz, Mandel's power was almost absolute. She controlled the lives of thousands of women, deciding who would live and who would die. Her selections were not just about capacity for work, but also served a more sinister purpose. Many of the women under her watch were sent to Dr. Josef Mengele for his grotesque human experiments. Mandel's collaboration with Mengele marked a new depth of her involvement in the Holocaust. Mandel's time at Auschwitz also saw the continuation of her brutal disciplinary methods. She was known for her sadistic punishments, which often involved physical and psychological torture. Her presence in the camp was enough to instill terror among the prisoners. The mere act of making eye. Contact with her could lead to disappearance or death. This was power wielded in its most malevolent form. Her influence extended beyond the confines of the camp. Mandel was instrumental in training new guards, imparting her methods and ideology to a new generation of camp overseers. This aspect of her role was perhaps one of the most insidious, as it ensured the continuation and amplification of cruelty long after her direct involvement. Maria Mandel's rise to power within the Nazi concentration camp system was a chilling testament to how a confluence of personal ambition, ideological zeal, and a system of unchecked power can lead to extraordinary human suffering. Her journey from a warden at Lichtenberg to the head supervisor at Auschwitz was marked by an escalating series of brutalities, each more horrifying than the last. Auschwitz, the apex of cruelty. Maria Mandel's arrival at Auschwitz marked the culmination of her transformation into one of the Holocaust's most infamous figures. Her tenure at this notorious death camp was characterized by an unparalleled level of cruelty, earning her the chilling moniker, the Beast of Auschwitz. Auschwitz, the largest and most lethal of the Nazi concentration camps, was a complex of unspeakable horror. Here, Mandel's role transcended the mere administration of punishment. She became an active participant in the industrialized murder of millions. As the head supervisor of the female section, her authority was unchallenged, and her influence was devastating. Mandel's daily routine at Auschwitz was a grotesque parade of inhumanity. She presided over the selections, deciding who would be sent to the gas chambers and who would be spared for labor or gruesome medical experiments. Her choices were capricious, often based on whims rather than any discernible criteria. This power over life and death was not merely administrative for Mandel, it was a source of perverse satisfaction. Collaborating closely with Dr. Josef Mengele, known as the Angel of Death, Mandel played a crucial role in his barbaric human experiments. She handpicked prisoners for Mengele, often choosing those she deemed unfit or troublesome. Under her watch, countless women, men, and children were subjected to unspeakable atrocities in the name of pseudoscience. Mandel's cruelty was not confined to the selection process. She was notorious for her brutal disciplinary methods. One of her most harrowing practices involved forcing prisoners to stand for hours in the freezing cold after being doused in water, leading to frostbite or death. She reveled in these acts of torture, often watching with a detached amusement as prisoners suffered under her command. The rules of Auschwitz were strict and merciless, and Mandel enforced them with an iron fist. She demanded absolute obedience, and any infraction, however minor, was met with severe punishment. Prisoners lived in constant fear of her unpredictable wrath. A mere glance in her direction could result in beatings, torture, or execution. Mandel's power extended beyond physical abuse. She manipulated the social structure within the camp, creating a hierarchy that pitted prisoners against each other. Some women were selected as her favorites, often referred to as pets. These prisoners received better treatment in exchange for their loyalty and often participated in abusing fellow inmates. This system of favoritism and betrayal further eroded the solidarity among prisoners, adding a psychological dimension to the already unbearable physical suffering. Despite the pervasive atmosphere of fear and despair, acts of resistance and humanity persisted within the camp. Prisoners shared food, provided medical care in secret, and even attempted sabotage. These acts, while small in the face of such overwhelming oppression, were significant. They were a testament to the human spirit's resilience, a stark contrast to Mandel's inhumanity. Mandel's presence at Auschwitz was not merely that of an overseer, she was an integral part of the machinery of death. Her actions contributed directly to the suffering and demise of countless individuals. The efficiency with which she executed her duties made her an invaluable asset to the Nazi regime and a key figure in the Holocaust's darkest chapter. As the war neared its end and the Allied forces advanced, the reality of Auschwitz and the extent of the atrocities committed there began to come to light. For Mandel, the end was approaching. The liberation of Auschwitz by the Soviet troops marked the beginning of her downfall. Her reign of terror was over, but the scars she left on history and on the lives of survivors were indelible. Maria Mandel's story at Auschwitz is a harrowing reminder of the depths of human depravity. In her, we see the embodiment of the Nazi regime's worst excesses, a chilling example of how power, when wielded without conscience, can lead to unimaginable cruelty. Her legacy is not just that of a perpetrator of evil, but as a symbol of what can happen when hatred and ideology are allowed to override basic humanity. As we reflect on her actions and their impact, we are reminded of the importance of remembering and learning from the past to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated. The fall of a tyrant. The final chapter in Maria Mandel's story begins as the tides of World War II turned against the Axis powers. The once unassailable fortress of Nazi Germany was crumbling, and with it, the systematic apparatus of death and destruction that Mandel had helped to uphold at Auschwitz. As the Allied forces advanced, the Nazi regime's collapse became inevitable. Mandel, aware of the impending doom, fled Auschwitz in a desperate attempt to escape retribution. This flight marked a stark contrast to her previous unshakable authority, revealing a palpable sense of fear and vulnerability. Mandel's escape led her back to her native Austria, where she sought refuge. In a twist of fate, she approached her father's home, seeking shelter. However, her father, aware of her notorious actions, denied her entry, refusing to harbor a daughter who had become synonymous with the atrocities of the Holocaust. This rejection by her own family underscored the depth of her fall from power. Undeterred, Mandel found temporary sanctuary at her sister's home. This respite was short-lived as the net of justice was closing in. The liberation of Auschwitz and Ravensbrück had released a flood of testimonies from survivors, painting a vivid and horrifying picture of the cruelties inflicted within these camps. Mandel's name was prominent among those accused of the most heinous crimes. The United States intelligence services, armed with these testimonies, began a relentless manhunt for the perpetrators of these atrocities. Mandel, once a feared and powerful figure within the Nazi hierarchy, was now a fugitive, her name synonymous with cruelty and barbarism. On August 10, 1945, the inevitable occurred. Mandel was apprehended by Allied forces. Her capture marked the end of a gruesome chapter in history. She was subjected to intense interrogations, where the full extent of her involvement in the Holocaust was laid bare. The evidence against her was overwhelming, painting a picture of a woman deeply complicit in the machinery of death and torture. Mandel's trial was a part of a broader effort to bring Nazi war criminals to justice. In November 1947, she was extradited to Poland, where she would face the consequences of her actions. The trial was held in Krakow, a city that had witnessed the horrors of Nazi occupation firsthand. The proceedings were a grim testament to the cruelty of the regime Mandel had served. During the trial, survivors of Auschwitz and Ravensbrück came forward, their testimonies providing chilling accounts of Mandel's brutality. They spoke of her role in the selections, her involvement in the sadistic punishments, and her collaboration with figures like Josef Mengele. The evidence was irrefutable, and the verdict was inevitable. Mandel was found guilty of crimes against humanity. The sentence was death, a stark and final judgment for the atrocities she had committed. On January 24, 1948, Mandel was executed by hanging. Her death marked the end of the Beast of Auschwitz, but it was more than that. It was a symbolic act of retribution, a statement that such crimes against humanity would not go unpunished. The execution of Maria Mandel closed a dark chapter, but it also opened a path to healing and remembrance. For the survivors of the Holocaust, it was a small measure of justice in the face of overwhelming loss and suffering. However, the legacy of Mandel and the system she represented could not be extinguished by her death. The memories of her cruelty and the suffering she inflicted would endure, a haunting reminder of the depths of human depravity. Mandel's fall from a tyrant to a condemned war criminal serves as a powerful narrative of the consequences of unchecked power and inhumanity. Her story is a cautionary tale, a reminder of the importance of justice and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unspeakable evil. As we reflect on her life and death, we are reminded of the need to remain vigilant against hatred and tyranny, to ensure that the lessons of the past are not forgotten. The fall of Maria Mandel is not just the end of a tyrant, it is a call to remember and to learn, to honor the victims by striving for a world where such atrocities are never repeated. Reflections on Justice and Legacy. The execution of Maria Mandel, the Beast of Auschwitz, marked not just the end of a notorious war criminal, but also opened a broader discourse on justice, legacy, and the human capacity for evil. Her story, steeped in atrocities, forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of justice and the enduring impact of her actions on history and collective memory. Mandel's trial and subsequent execution in Krakow were emblematic of the Allies' efforts to bring Nazi war criminals to justice. This process was fraught with moral and legal complexities. How does one adequately penalize architects of mass genocide? The trials, including Mandel's, sought to deliver justice not just for individual crimes, but for an unprecedented scale of collective atrocity. Her execution was a definitive statement by the international community, a rejection of the ideology she represented, and a commitment to upholding human dignity. The justice meted out to Mandel, however, was more than a legal reckoning. It was a crucial step in the process of collective healing and remembrance. For the survivors of Auschwitz and Ravensbrück, her conviction was a validation of their suffering and a public acknowledgement of the horrors they endured. It was an affirmation that the world had not turned a blind eye to their plight, and that those responsible for their torment were being held accountable. Yet the story of Maria Mandel also raises profound questions about the nature of evil and the factors that drive ordinary individuals to commit horrific acts. Mandel, who began her life as an unremarkable Austrian woman, evolved into one of the Holocaust's most ruthless figures. Her transformation highlights the dangerous potential of ideological indoctrination and the capacity for human beings to commit evil under certain circumstances. It prompts us to ponder how societal, political, and personal factors intertwine to lead an individual down a path of moral corruption. Mandel's legacy is also a testament to the banality of evil, a concept famously articulated by political theorist Hannah Arendt. Arendt argued that great evils in history were not executed by fanatics or sociopaths, but by ordinary individuals who accepted the premises of their state and therefore participated with the view that their actions were normal. Mandel's actions at Auschwitz were a horrifying illustration of this theory, a demonstration of how an ordinary person could become an instrument of a genocidal regime. Reflecting on Mandel's life and the atrocities she committed also forces us to consider the broader context of her actions. While Mandel was undoubtedly responsible for her crimes, she was also a product of a specific historical and socio-political context. The Nazi regime created an environment where cruelty was normalized and inhumanity was institutionalized. This context does not absolve Mandel of her guilt, but serves to remind us of the dangers of extremist ideologies and the importance of safeguarding democratic values and human rights. The legacy of Maria Mandel extends beyond her individual story. It encompasses the broader narrative of the Holocaust and its aftermath. Her life and actions are a stark reminder of the fragility of civilization and the importance of vigilance against hatred and authoritarianism. The Holocaust was a cataclysmic event that reshaped our understanding of human nature and the capacity for evil. Mandel's role in this history underscores the need for continuous education about the Holocaust, ensuring that future generations understand the consequences of hatred and intolerance. The unseen scars, survivor stories, and the legacy of trauma. In the aftermath of Maria Mandel's execution, the focus often shifts to legal justice and historical documentation. Yet, an integral aspect of understanding her impact lies in the personal narratives of those who survived her regime. This chapter delves into the unseen scars left by Mandel, the enduring legacy of trauma in the lives of Auschwitz and Ravensbrück survivors. Survivor stories provide a poignant and essential perspective on Mandel's reign of terror. These accounts are not just records of historical events, they are vivid, personal testimonies of endurance, loss, and the human spirit's resilience. Through these stories, the abstract figures of Holocaust statistics gain individual faces, names, and voices. They remind us that behind every number was a person, a life irrevocably altered by the horrors they witnessed and endured. The survivors' narratives often recount the daily horrors of life under Mandel. They speak of the constant fear, the dehumanizing conditions, and the brutal punishments. Yet, amidst this darkness, these stories also reveal moments of bravery, solidarity, and compassion. They tell of shared scraps of food, whispered words of encouragement, and covert acts of resistance. In these acts, however small, lay the defiance of the human spirit against the crushing machinery of the Nazi regime. However, the end of the war and liberation from the camps did not mean an end to the survivors. Suffering, the trauma inflicted by Mandel and others like her, left deep psychological wounds. Many survivors grappled with what we now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, enduring nightmares, flashbacks, and emotional distress that lasted for decades. Their experiences in the camps cast long shadows over their post-war lives, affecting relationships, mental health, and their ability to reintegrate into society. The children and grandchildren of survivors often speak of the Holocaust's transgenerational impact. The pain and trauma experienced by one generation echoed in the lives of the next, manifesting in various forms of emotional and psychological strain. This phenomenon highlights the far-reaching consequences of Mandel's actions, extending beyond her lifetime and affecting generations. In addressing the legacy of trauma, it is crucial to recognize the role of memory and storytelling. Survivor testimonies have been instrumental in Holocaust education, ensuring that the atrocities are not forgotten. These stories serve as a powerful counter to Holocaust denial and distortion. They are a testament to the truth of what happened and a call to remember and learn from the past. The survivor's resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity is not just a tale of past suffering, but a source of inspiration. Their stories are a testament to the strength of the human spirit, an affirmation of the capacity to heal, and a reminder of the importance of supporting those who have endured trauma. As we reflect on the legacy of Maria Mandel, we must also acknowledge the strength and courage of those who survived her tyranny. The narratives of Auschwitz and Ravensbrück survivors are an integral part of understanding the full scope of Mandel's impact. They provide a human context to the historical facts, a lens through which we can better understand the magnitude of the Holocaust's horrors. These stories are essential to ensuring that the lessons of the past are not lost and that the world remains vigilant against hatred and inhumanity.